All right. Well, welcome. We took a little hiatus from webinars, but we're back and we're back in a big way. Today we have Peter Neill. And Peter, what I'm excited about is, let me turn that do not disturb on. What I'm excited about is, like myself, in a selfish way, I'm both the filmmaker and the photographer, both the creative and the technical.
Mm.
And you are as well. You're a photographer, you're a director of live music. You have, some of the most iconic bands. You've been on the, done photography for them. And it's really exciting to have you on today to discuss Rotolight, especially the Titan. You're one of the few people in the entire world who's had a decent hands-on with the Titan X1 that we just launched last week. So Peter, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself that I already hadn't said.
Cool. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's cool. And yeah, my name is Peter Neill. As you correctly said, I'm a photographer and director living in London. I moved to London from Ireland in 2012. I kind of, for many years, I worked in IT, like a lot of people do, before they get into photography, especially in the kind of oh 07, oh 08, oh 09, there seems to be a lot of people suddenly were buying SLRs, across that time. And I was one of those people. I'd always had been into photography as a kid. My grandfather lived with us when I was growing up, and I learned quite a bit from him. But I'd never really done much with it apart from being a hobby. But then when the financial kind of wreck of the economic crash in 2007, 2008 hit, the job I was in IT, I was a network admin basically, kind of went bye-bye because the whole company I was working for went, as did a lot of firms at that time. So I did what a lot of people did at that time and got into wedding photography. And don't get me wrong, I'm very grateful for the fact that I did it and it got financially through a tough couple of years. But I discovered very quickly that I was not built for wedding photography because I found it way too stressful. I never had a wedding go wrong, never had a client unhappy, thank God. I feel like that's some kind of miracle that I didn't. But I always felt that I was one thunderstorm away from catastrophe, or maybe like a groomsman disappearing to the pub when he's supposed to be in their formal pictures. It's a photographer that
And
gets blamed for that.
wedding photographers and wedding creatives, I bow down to them.
Yeah,
It
that's
is,
100% how
I
I
agree
feel.
with you. I did the same thing, going into doing weddings, and people would ask me, and I did that. And as much as it was great shooting, the anxiety,
Oh,
was
100%. And then what was even worse, you like have a family friend or a close mate, oh, would you shoot my wedding? And they think, oh, it'll be fine, it'll be relaxing, sure, it's me. And I'm thinking, it's
that's
not going to be
worse.
relaxing. It's worse because I'm supposed
Yes.
to be A, professional, and B, chatty to people who know me. But when the reality is I need to ignore them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just, I'm working as a photographer. So it got to the point where I wondered if I could disguise myself and go to a wedding of a friend I was shooting for. Never did though, never got that bad. But anyway, cut ahead a couple of years to kind of 2009, and I was really hating doing weddings, but at the same time grateful. That kind of like contradiction in terms. And I spotted a advertisement in a paper in Dublin for a web development job, and I had previously been a full-time web developer. It was a web development job in a graphic design company that was owned by U2, and so I thought, well, I might try and see if I can get some work here because I'll likely have some contacts in the music industry. And maybe, I've always had a massive passion for music, but maybe there's some way to use this to try and get into music. So when I started working there and I got this contract for a few weeks, um, I discovered that there was a guy working there called Steve Averill, who's the guy who named U2 and also designed their album covers. So the popularly known story about why they got their name, the plane, the U2, it's rubbish. It's not true. The reality is the name was picked because the name looked good in print, and they had been called the Hype. And this guy Steve gave the band 5 names to choose from that he felt would last as a style through the years. A bit like a good suit, a simple logo and a simple name works across a long period. So anyway, they got their name that way. And I showed Steve some pictures that I'd taken at the parties at the end of weddings. That was the closest I had to gig photography. And by some miracle, he liked what he saw and he contacted U2, and they flew me over to Sheffield in 2009, and Sheffield's in England, so it's just next door, basically, 1 hour flight from Dublin. And I shot, it was just first 3 songs, you know, no flash, standard press pass, but it was my first exposure to it. And it was a bizarre baptism of fire. Like, it was great. And I was very lucky that a lot of the images from that gig ended up in the official tour book. And then over the next year, after that gig went really well, the band were happy, the graphic design company were happy. Things were really bad at home financially with the whole crisis. So I did nothing for a year because I was kind of firefighting that whole situation at home. And then a year later, I went to shoot U2 in Paris. And I was very lucky to get my first Billboard cover from one of the pictures. It was a picture basically which Bono has his arms out like that. I think you might have it in the folder there. But basically it was for the Brazil edition of the magazine. So the kind of Bono with the arms out wide kind of matched that famous statue in Brazil's skyline. So I had those 2 gigs kind of under my belt, and I kind of realized that as good as they were, I lacked a lot of experience at really crappy venues with really horrible lights and terrible LEDs and all that kind of jazz. And so I went back to a promoter in Ireland and said, listen, I shot these 2 gigs. Can I shoot some stuff for you for basically parking money at various gigs around Dublin, you know, and maybe you could introduce me to management and other promoters and all that kind of jazz. And they did, and I did. And over the next course, a couple of years, I picked up clients, and probably my first kind of long-term client I picked up after that was an Irish band called The Script. And I still do loads with them. And in fact, I was on the phone with all 3 of them today for about an hour earlier this afternoon. So I've been working with them since kind of 2012 right up until now, which has been, you know, a really kind of a really positive experience. And then I remember they introduced me to will.i.am, and then that led to people like Black Eyed Peas, obviously, and Gary Barlow, and Take That, and like Justin Timberlake and Robbie Williams, and all sorts of, and Elbow is a band where probably UK viewers here of this would probably know more so than viewers in the States. But it's just kind of, and then one of my favorite acts to work with, who I've been working with a lot this last few years, is Rick Astley, who many of you will probably know from the Rickroll, but he's actually an incredible performer. So I've done a lot with him over the last few years as well.
Yeah, we'll see a couple of those pictures. While you were mentioning your, you know, Script being one of your first, you know, big ones, I put on one of the images from the Script folder.
Cool.
And this one popped out to me right away. I was like, wow, that's just so, you're just drawn into the entire experience right there.
Yeah, I mean, the Script are something else live. They put a lot of effort into their shows, and they rehearse. And if it's not perfect, they go back to the drawing board. And I'm lucky that there's a very trusting relationship built up between me and them, where I get to be involved in the planning for their live sets and the lighting design and stage design, and get to see all that stuff long before it's finalized, and go along to rehearsals. And it means they let me on stage during gigs because I know where to go and when to go. I have had a couple of disasters, the worst being in New York. I was in Radio City Music Hall, and I got trapped behind the drum kit. Yeah, Glenn Power, the drummer, basically, there was a particular moment in the gig where I was supposed to go behind Danny, the lead singer, to take a picture. And on my way to that spot, I stopped behind the drum kit as planned. And this next light at the back of the stage was supposed to get turned off.
Oh no!
And it didn't. And I ended up stuck there for a couple of minutes. And Glenn, the drummer, was like wetting himself laughing, you know, struggling to keep time. And then what's worse still, and to my shame, and I'll admit this so that hopefully it helps and prevents someone else from making the same mistake, I was very green around the ears at that point, and, you know, still quite new to the game. It was my first time traveling to the States for music related work. I was wearing a stripy red top, which is just, you don't do it. Like, you're supposed to wear black or dark colors, whatever.
Oh no!
So it was all the worst. But yeah, they still don't let me live it down. So there you go.
Well, And we had talked about this prior, you know, we could have go on stories and stories of the whole music business, because I used to be a radio DJ for many years. You've been touring with bands, and there's so many stories that we couldn't even share even 10% of it to the public.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
But it's a lot of fun. There's something about the music industry and concerts and the energy that's there that makes, you know, there's a reason why we desperately miss live music right now. Desperately.
Oh yeah, 100%. Not, and it is a time where everyone gets to, regardless of politics or creed or whatever the case may be, it's a time where everyone's there for the same reason, to, you know, to enjoy themselves. And you see in a way, in that environment, you often see the best of people.
Yeah.
You know, away from their preconceptions about other people, away from any prejudice they may hold. It's just, it's just some core stripped back to who they are, you know, minus any negative experiences or preconceptions they've been handed down through their growing up, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Rick Astley, he probably has the #1 music video that makes people smile at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I was very lucky. I don't know, just to mention it, but I did a really bizarre music video with him a couple of years ago, which obviously isn't as well known. But if you want to laugh, it's quite funny. There's a Back to the Future scene in the video, as in a remake of a Back to the Future scene. It's a song called "She Makes Me," where we got this yellow 3-wheeler car, and he's basically trying to, you don't know at the start of the video, but he's trying to get to his daughter's house to pick her up for her wedding, so we can drive her to her wedding. But the car keeps breaking down, and then Rick is gradually going more and more insane and getting more and more aggressive with the car. Yeah, if you have a Google, it's a bit of fun, but
oh man. Well, let's dive into some of your images, and I want to start off with the piano images, because they have a good story behind them.
Oh yeah.
Share. So I want to start off kind of an overall picture, and I don't want it to be, there it goes. Overall image of what we're going to kind of see the close-ups with, but so this piano has a story.
Yeah, this piano has an incredible story. So this piano used to belong to Freddie Mercury, and it's in a place called Metropolis Studios in London. And some of the pictures that you're about to show were just quickly taken at the end. There was an event, a music writers event being run by Spotify about a year ago. And one of the writers and I went down to this room just to grab a few stills. And incidentally, I kind of always try and carry, when I'm going to something like that, like a little Neo 2 in my camera bag, just because A, it's light, B, it's powerful, C, it takes batteries. I don't need mains power. And I can, you know, it's light enough to mount on one of those little, you know, bendy tripods without it falling over, you know. So we positioned them a little bit around the room, and that, in fact, that same piano, that was her manager, that picture, and then the ones after this ones are her. So I was doing a couple of test shots with her manager, and then these ones were taken just literally in that little room with the piano. So it's just bizarre getting to even, you know, considering the history of a piano like that. And we only had literally about 2.5 minutes to get the shots before the room was needed, but it was just great to have such an interesting piece of history to stumble across and have a chance to do something with, you know.
You know, and I actually keep my Neo with me at all times as well, because you never know. It's a tool, and it's such a nice lightweight tool that fits into my bag, that if you do come across something like this, and to be able to have and access that tool to create these amazing stories and capture that, it's just stunning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, the reflection it's great. I love that when you get that in a lovely piano like that. Exactly. I mean, and I have one of these pictures because of the significance of that piano. One of the first things I did was get one of these printed and stick it in a frame. I don't have the wall space to put it up at the moment, but maybe someday.
Oh, I just have chills. It just, you get your music and the photography, and that black and white is just, Yes.
Yeah, I adore black. I mean, as much as I do a lot of big, glossy, colorful shows, there is something about black and white which is just epic in a whole other way, you know?
I like how dark the darks are in this. It just helps with the mood. Do
Yeah.
you do anything in particular with your black and white? Do you use a program or do you kind of have your own set
Just
of editing?
it's really, I mean, it's all done in Lightroom. It really depends. I mean, like probably most photographers, I have as starting points different presets I've made and so on, you know, but with any given image, like with this one, I remember actually going in and really, you know, bringing down some of the shadows and leaving some of the highlights where they were, so that you get that just that deep contrast, which really just makes the image about that connection between the piano, and you see enough of someone, but they don't take over the image. It's more the relationship between them and the instrument, rather than being just of the person.
Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous. And you had somebody else holding the Neo over.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically, yeah. So her manager was just, for the different shots, was just holding the Neo in different positions for me. Because we literally had a couple of minutes, because the piano and the whole room itself had been hired out. It was either 7 or 8 p.m. we were just coming up to, and it literally was just one of those things where better to ask for forgiveness rather than permission, you know.
Oh, I've done that.
They still don't know I took them, but hey.
They don't have to know.
They don't have to know. If you're watching, I'm sorry. No.
I once paid a cocktail waitress at a casino bar to turn the other way so we could do a quick shoot in the corner of a chair in a bookcase. You know what?
Amazing.
Well, if it's confessional time, I remember to skip a queue for a new camera coming out. It was just before my second U2 gig. I skipped the queue for getting, I think, what camera was it? It was the 5D Mark II was about to come out. And I wasn't going to get it for a week after the gig. So I basically paid the shop owner 100 quid and said, any chance I could skip the queue now? He was like, fine, no problem. Yeah, so.
Oh, that's great. Now, you've had a chance to play with the X1. I'm jealous because I haven't had a chance yet. So when you first got it, tell us about your thought process and emotions when you first get the X1.
Well, when I first got the X1 and opened it up, this is a positive thing, but it might not sound it at first. I was like, where's everything else? You know, because you know, just because when, you know, for me, obviously, as someone who does stills and video, the idea of a light that I can use in a very versatile manner between stills and video is an attractive thing. And you know, I hadn't really come across, for instance, the likes of electronic diffusion before. So I was naturally a little bit skeptical about how soft is this going to be when I, you know, really up the diffusion. Am I going to really start needing to like somehow get either, you know, get other softbox accessories or take one of my own softboxes that I have in the cupboard and like somehow tape it to it, you know, but none of that is required. None of that is required because so I was really quite surprised by, I guess, the versatility. I mean, for me, a couple of the big takeaways for me, one of them is that it's so light. So I remember I brought it down to a studio near my house because I've not been traveling far this last year, obviously, with COVID and all that jazz. So there's a studio about literally 3 minutes walk from my house. So it's refreshing to be able to carry the equipment down there and not worry about that. And I had a dancer called Brendan, who I think you have some images of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who we did some shots with the Neo with the X1s. And first of all, on strobe, compared to like normal lighting, to be able to just fire and fire away and not worry about recharge time is a very big thing. And to give you an idea, I had done another shoot in this same studio the week before, and we had nightmare problems because I was shooting too fast for the lights that they had, and they kept overheating and then beeping, and we had to wait 5 minutes for them to cool down, and it was getting to the point where it was awkward with the client, if you know what I mean. So just because there wasn't enough ventilation in the room. But not having those issues obviously is a great thing. The diffusion is amazing, and in some of the images you'll see I had the lights quite well, very close to him in some of them, and just to be able to not worry about the really harsh spots because of being able to dial up the diffusion was fantastic. And then even on this image that you're showing, you see, so I've got there's two of the X1s here. The one on the right, and it's slightly behind him. It's kind of I've because you can just choose any color on it. I've just quickly, rather than having to grab a filter and stick it on the front of it, I quickly just dial in on the touch screen in the back, the shade of red that I want, or obviously I can just do a predefined filter, and then just a pure white light on the other one, which is on the other side of the image, but slightly more towards me. And to do all of that quickly without heat being generated, so he's not getting hot because of these two lights, because because the nature of the technology is that it doesn't get that warm really. And that combined with just being able to quickly change those colors, or even just, for instance, set them cycling, which we did a bit of the time as well. Yeah, this is another one with the two of the X1s where, and he was literally just mid jump. And I mean, for me, coming from gig work, I love working with dancers because it's all about capturing the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with the very nature of my job, I'm used to being able to go into rapid fire if I need to. And again, because of that fast cycle time, it's not an issue. So we in quite a short amount of time, we got a huge amount of stuff that he was really, really happy with. We didn't need the other thing. I mean, not on this shoot, but I think I sent you. There's a video I sent you, which I did with some of these lights as well, and just the versatility of being able to control the lights for video, for instance, for whether it be like from a DMX controller, or being able to adjust them on the back and set presets. Again, it's really, really refreshing. Probably one of the handiest things for me as someone who goes between stills and video, though, I mean, I guess, was whether it be in stills or video, not being restricted by frame rate. Because my experience of this kind of technology up until Rotolight was very much where I have to worry about horrible banding with LEDs and stuff like and that kind of stuff, and which can really wreck your creative opportunities, where just being able to forget about that stuff and go to either a ludicrously high or a very slow shutter speed and not worry about that. So yeah, all in all, a very positive experience, simply because it doesn't get in the way. It lets me get on with what I want to do super simply.
It's a tool to help you tell your story. It's a creative process, and allowing the technology to move that story is exactly what I'm seeing in what you're doing.
Yeah, it doesn't get in the way, because I'm not wasting time like constantly changing filters or putting modifiers on. I can quickly try an idea for the sake of it out of a moment's creative inspiration, because you're not having to waste 10 minutes to change over. So because it's very easy, yourself, with a lot of shoots you do have to plan really well, and that's fine. That still happens. You still need to plan well for a shoot, but to have space for creativity because all the time for this other stuff is reduced, that's where the magic is.
I think we sort of experienced this a lot. So I was on the shoot we did for the promo film, and the fact that we had those two setups, plus we had a separate setup for when we did the interview with you, Peter, and the fact that we were able to switch between those setups really quickly. We only had the day to shoot everything in, and we had a lot of lights, but they were really quick for us to set up, and we only had a small crew.
Yeah, that and the presets as well are godsend.
Yeah.
Where you can literally say, do this, and you might have adjusted 10, 15 settings. It might be that you only needed to do 3 or 4, but you might have been fiddling for a few minutes with different colors and so on. But just to be able to say, this is how I want it, save it, and then go along to a totally different setup and not worry about going back to the other one. So obviously it's a big win as well.
All right, I'm gonna see if I bring this up. All right, I'm gonna pull up the video with bridges.
Cool.
Let me get my screen shared again and share that. See if I can. Yeah, I'll turn the music down a little bit so we can hear. There we go. So explain to us the process on how the lights are in this.
Yeah, so when we were setting up these lights, both the X1s and the X2s, no problem.
Yeah, no, I was trying to get my audio so I can hear you and.
Oh, no problem. All good.
There we go.
There's essentially the way in which they're I guess controlled. It allows you essentially to almost in a way, I guess, from my pardon my terminology, but in a way to like network or chain them. So whereby you're like, for instance, you see the kind of pulsing that's going on here, but there's also like a follow effect in certain part of the video where their lights are going off in sequence. So you're able to actually, with just yourself or with like a very small crew, do something that you might normally have to have a much bigger crew and a full lighting desk for. Where considering all the different effects you see in this video, there was no big like lighting desk or anything like that. It was all done using the technology itself. It just goes to show that for someone like me who very often works on my own or in small teams, it makes it, you know, very, very practical. We wanted obviously this kind of environment with around the lead singer and around the guitarist and the drummer, where we had him in that same spot. It was a great spot to really make quite a spectacle with those, for instance, those big X2 lights, just because of the sheer strobe going in time with the music was really quite effective as a visual tool. The room we were using was kind of like this rustic warehouse type thing, which is this nice, you know, I guess juxtaposition to what we have with the lighting. And even you can see there's a really old light in the background there, you know, from a looks like it's from a movie set or something like 40 years ago. But yeah, it was just a really kind of positive experience. I mean, even like if you go back to that, considering how we were a couple of hours, but for quite a long time, the drummer was, if you go back a few seconds,
okay,
here to one of the whole band shots. Oh, Siri, my Siri's activated there. Sorry. My Siri has an Irish accent. But, you know, for instance, in this setup, or indeed in the other setup, with any other kind of light, he'd have been boiling. Yes. You know, which is an you know, an important factor. And then again here we see how the red on the ground, we had a couple of the X1s, a red one on the left and a blue one on the right, just firing upwards. And that was something that was only added in as an afterthought on the day. We're like, oh, well, we just do that. And we had the lights there, and it was just, yeah, it's fine, let's do it. Because it only took a couple of minutes. It didn't knock us off schedule. So
no, that's amazing.
Yeah,
you're right. Having that many lights around you on any other in the past would have been just his shirt would have been drenched.
yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So not that it probably doesn't when he's playing drums anyways, but then to have on top of the spotlight.
Exactly. Yeah. And we did have obviously a couple of people from Rotolight there, which was great that day, because at the end of the day, I was at this point I was still very much learning what all the different modes on the lights were. So it's just kind of like when it was showing me, oh, we can do this kind of strobing, we can change the frequency of it, we can do like a lightning effect. I was like, okay, there's a lot of options here. You know, so sometimes when I get too many options, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I'm like, try everything. But,
What's so funny is when I would bring the light on a set, you know, pre-COVID, and you would walk in and these gaffers or DPs would have their arms folded and they're like, really, another light? And then you start showing it to them and their body language starts changing, and all of a sudden they're like, I can do this and I can do this. And you see their mind spinning and that creativity and that passion alive of why they were in the first place. And I've never seen that happen before with a light. And it's like, it unlocks these creative juices in really
100%.
Cool ways.
And the inner geek, there's two things in particular on the other side of the light that really, the geek in me absolutely loved. One was the ability just to drag along the color palettes and choose the colors. But two, as someone who used to build and repair computers, how speedy the interface is, and it's not, and there's no lag, and it's just like, so often, don't get me wrong, but so often when you buy a piece of hardware that has a touch screen and you just know it's going to have the slowest CPU in the world, and you're like, it's going to be like, you click, tap, you're waiting, and then you click again, you've gone to another tab, and then you literally have to tie yourself down so it can catch up. Like, it's, whereas with this, it's just like fluid, and it's just like, my action was finally someone who thought about both ends of the experience.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think going into design the interface and designing Titans as a whole, I think our priority was like letting people be creative without the faff, like the fuss of just like the technology getting in the way, just being able to have that seamless experience.
Yeah, well, and exactly. I've been on set where, you know, there's times where my director would get gear and he's like, okay, I need to get going. We need to like be up and going in 5 minutes. And I start sweating, the heart rate goes up because you just got to figure something out like really fast and understand it. And the nice thing with this light is you first look at it and you feel a little overwhelmed, but once you start touching it, you're like, oh, this is easy.
Yeah, exactly. And even when, even just like, for instance, the barn doors, taking them off, like I remember the first time I took the barn doors off, I was like, oh, this is going to be awkward. And I was like, oh, it's just like, this little clip, press in these like 2 little clips and they just slide off. It was like, oh, why haven't the lights been that easy before? You know, so.
Well, and as someone, you get this as a photographer and someone who also does film, this is a game changer, especially, you know, knowing that you have the constant light, you can do whatever you want. But then to have that strobe built in and being able to strobe with the digital diffusion of any color that you can possibly imagine, as a photographer, that's massive. And that's a game changer for me, you know, because as you said, you can think of like your dancer shots of having those different colors and capturing it and having a diffusion in on that. Yeah. Good Lord, I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's just more room for creative opportunities. And even in that shot that some of those shots where you could see the lights in them, you know, the fact that I didn't need to have softboxes getting in the way, which in a way would have actually taken away from the shot because the lights were actually part of the composition, you know, of the shot in the first place. But it is massive for me. People think there's a ton of money in music, and there very often isn't. You know, bands are often on very tight budgets. And when I go on a tour, you know, for a few weeks, I have to think very carefully about what I put in the bag. You know, because you know, as regards whether it be how much time I'm going to have or how much luggage I'm carrying around. You know, some of it I might be lugging myself for quite a bit of the time, you know, before connecting with the band on tour. So there's a lot of considerations, and to suddenly go to a situation now that I do so much more video than I used to be able to say I can actually bring this one thing and be able to say to the band, we can pretty much do anything we want in either spectrum is great.
Yeah, and from like a third perspective, I'm not a photographer and I'm not a videographer, and in fact I actually don't have any experience in either. Like being able to go on these shoots, be able to look at the light and know exactly what does what without having to pull out the manual is very useful from my point of view. You know, it's very easy for like someone who's not super experienced, not a cinematographer or anything, to, you know, go into it and know what they need to do.
Yeah, exactly. It is very, very, very approachable. And I mean, we said this before it started. I mean, I wouldn't describe myself as a studio photography expert. Like, I've come from the live scene where I'm very often being reactive to a chaotic environment where you never know quite what's going to happen next. And over the last couple of years, I've delved more into the studio stuff. And the fact that it's been approachable has actually really facilitated me doing that much more. Because over the last 6 to 8 months with lockdown, whether it be playing with the X1 recently, and obviously the X2 as well, but also with some of the Rotolight gear I already have, just having the time just to explore that stuff, and and be able to very easily, whether it be play with the color temperature, like because it's just like, for instance, on the Neo 2s, etc., just this really simple dial. I've got the power, I've got the color temperature, and I'm used as a photographer. I'm very used to dealing with that, white balance and so on. So it's just this easy kind of translation for me, and migration coming from one industry to the other, that got me up and running a lot more quickly.
We've actually got a couple of, sorry, Pam.
no, go ahead. I was just
Okay,
going to
cool.
agree. We started out with the DSLRs that started to merge the film and photography side.
Yeah.
And that technology was that was groundbreaking, and to see that evolve, and it just makes sense that now we have the accessories such as lighting to help with that as well. And it's great to see what we do, and especially as creatives, and to see those merge and see the technologies now come with us. Did you know you could edit video in Photoshop, and you've been able to do that for years, and people are now realizing that.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I only discovered it last year. I mean, I don't use it for video editing, but the fact that it's even possible, it just blows my mind.
Yeah, well, because if you're a photographer and you're nervous about getting in video, no, you already have all the tools. You know how to expose. You just keep it open and you walk.
Yeah, 100%.
And if you're used to something like Photoshop, start in Photoshop. Get yourself used to that.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly.
Cool. So we have a couple of photography related questions in the YouTube chat.
Cool.
So Pete, I can't remember whether or not, have you used the EOS before? If not, then Pam might be able to help answer as well.
Yes, to a certain amount, not a massive amount, but but I have used it, absolutely.
Cool. So we've kind of got a couple of questions. One is from Steve, who says, which would you say is better for stills for the money, 1X1 or an EOS 2 light kit?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Well, for me,
yeah,
I mean, for someone who needs to be, for me, in my side, I can only speak to my own experience. I would take the X1 because of the sheer versatility. And though the ability to play with different colors in such an easy way, and not having to buy filters, that's what I would prefer. And then although for argument's sake that's just the one light, like you could potentially, like for instance, if budget was a constraint, you could maybe have for instance a Neo 2 as a second light or something like that. I would, for my work and for having those options, especially with things like the up close diffusion and not having to worry about softboxes, those are massive for me, because I'm very often working backstage in small green rooms and the like. So yeah, for me it's a no-brainer. That but I would appreciate that obviously for different people's working scenarios it might be a different answer for them.
Cool. And the other question from Mark is, if they can only buy one light just because of budget constraints, is it worth just getting one of them for their photography? They mostly do outdoor portraits. They're currently using a Profoto B10 and an A1X.
Yeah, so they're asking about 1X1, are they?
Yes.
Yeah. I would say it's worth it. I mean, bear in mind, with outdoor portraits, it's amazing what sometimes someone will do with literally just a reflector, a natural light. So if you have the luxury of having an assistant, and you literally can only afford to buy one light now, and that's fine. I mean, nobody's finances are flowing well these days, except maybe Amazon. But there's an awful lot you can do by if it's doing outdoor portraiture, combining this light with a reflector that's either working with the natural light or the light that's coming from the X1. I think there's probably plenty you can do there. So I would personally think the X1 would be great.
Steve says he has a couple of Neo 2s. So if you had an X1 and supplementing with the Neo 2s, you're set.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. I just thought the question was about someone who could literally only have one. But
sorry, Steve and Mark are two different people. I should have clarified a bit better.
But
Steve, so Neos having the X1, you are set.
Yeah, 100%. But as regards Mark's question, I still think that if he does have a second person to assist with like a reflector, and he's doing outdoor stuff, then the X1 is still a great purchase.
So this is actually more of a question for Pam, just because I know I'm going to butcher the answer. Bluetooth and mobile phone app control.
Yes, so currently Luminaire, which is industry standard, it's got the latest Lumen radio on there, and that's going to be your best bet as far as app goes, is Luminaire. I know there's some third parties which I haven't particularly played with, because Luminaire in itself is what major sets already use. And so my limited time is to be able to keep my head wrapped around that particular app. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. As of now, 2020 did kind of turn everything upside down, as you know, Rebecca.
Yes.
But you can do things like a gaffer's control box, which will run the lights off of the wireless DMX there. That gives you a lot of options as far as that goes. But we don't know what's going to happen, or I don't know what's going to happen for 2021, but I know there's going to be definitely some advancements continually going with the wireless and Bluetooth options in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely very important for us that we've built that into the light rather than asking people to spend X amount of money on a base station and then something to plug into the back of the light for that to work. So yeah, I think that's something that's very important to us. It's also worth noting, I'm pretty sure for people who want to get Lumen Radio or Luminaire, that's only on iOS.
So it is only on iOS. That's the downside of Luminaire. So and I know Lumen Radio, the latest version of Lumen Radio, is having some issues with some of the wireless controls as far as on set, but that's on Lumen Radio side. So Lumen Radio, I think on the next update, we'll have a lot of those bugs fixed. But it does have the most advanced Lumen Radio built in. And then Luminaire is an app that's totally separate that runs all the major manufacturer lights in the world, where you can do a lot of things in there, set special effects and all of that jazz. And then you have things like a gaffer's board and the gaffer's box, which allows you to control the lights and again, set different dimming options, colors, that sort of, etc. So there's a lot of options to control the light wirelessly and more that are going to come down the road as technology continues to advance. So a little side note on the technology, LED technology has been around for 50 plus years, but it's really only been in the last decade that a lot of the stuff that we're able to do with LEDs has been able to be effective and cost efficient. It's really only been in the last few years. So there's a lot of things coming down the road that I'm excited for as a filmmaker.
Cool. Sorry, one more question, which is actually, I guess, for both of you. Marcia in the Zoom chat says, what's Rotolight gear would you recommend for an environment with on a beach in Rio de Janeiro, because they're based in Brazil?
First off, take me.
It's over to you because I've not used on the beach.
I'll say, please take us. In the UK right now, it is cold and it is wet.
Okay, sorry. All I heard was beach in Brazil, and I didn't even see the whole question.
So, which kit would you recommend? Shooting in basically Brazilian summer on a beach, bright sunlight. So yeah, you've got heat and bright sunlight to compete with. Well,
you're going to want the most power possible if you're competing against the sun. So definitely an X1 is going to be X1, depending on how many you're shooting. I would say the X1 is going to be your most portable option.
Cool.
Peter?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been on the beach in about a year and a half. But I mean, just to echo what you said, I mean, the biggest factor here is obviously competing with sunlight, and I would say the X1 is probably the balance of something that has enough power and isn't going to break your carrying it up the beach with those heavy footsteps through sand.
Now, the way the light is made, and if you have hands on or get to see it, it's made so that it's very heat efficient and can withhold a lot of heat, and you have various fan options as well. So that's why I definitely, with that summer heat and that sun, your X1 is definitely going to be your best bet. It's that way you don't have to worry about any particular gear overheating and things like that. Like the X1 will be able to handle that summer heat on the beach.
Cool. Thank you both. Sorry for interrupting.
We're here for. So, and it's great that we're getting some really, really great questions. This is awesome. Any other questions? I know that lag. I didn't even see that question until just a moment ago.
It's cool.
No
there aren't any others that I can see.
Peter, I have another question. Once we're
Mhm.
obviously getting out of COVID, what does your next year look like in terms of projects that you have, and what are you looking forward to in terms of gear and your
Well,
creative?
yeah, so next year, I mean, I'm kind of almost hesitant to get excited about the next year because it's who not really knows like what it's going to be like. But there's a lot of tours that potentially are going to happen next year.
All at the
It's
same
almost like
time.
2 years of work being crammed into one. So, I mean, for instance, I'll be on the road with Rick Astley with a big tour with him. I'll be on the road with the script for sure. I'll be on the road probably with another band called Elbow, quite a bit, I imagine, as well. And possibly doing some other stuff with some artists under a label called Polydor. And if all of these things happen, and I hope they will, it's going to be pretty hectic in both kind of the live environment, but also the kind of backstage, behind the scenes environment, which is great. There's been a lot of studio stuff that I've done this last number of months, obviously, like kind of in bigger studios with, thankfully with a bit of, it allows me to keep, a safe distance from people, where a lot of artists have taken the time to do, to do writing or recording. And I've been lucky to be able to, oh, my daughter's just brought me a coffee. Thanks, honey. Cheers.
I wish I had someone to bring me coffee.
Yeah. Cheers, Evie. But so a lot of artists that I work with have taken this time to try and do something creative just to fill the hours. So I've gotten to shoot a lot of like interesting behind the scenes content. I've gotten over lockdown to edit a lot of content that have been put on a long finger. A couple of those that I'm editing this last few months may end up on a couple of the streaming networks potentially, which would be kind of cool.
Awesome.
So and then music video wise, I'm hoping to direct some more. Definitely want to do a lot more with dancers as their industry comes back, like whether like Broadway shows and all that kind of stuff. When that stuff comes back, because I've been putting a lot of groundwork in with a number of dancers and doing work with them. In fact, I got texts from 2 dancers while we've been chatting, which is great. Hoping that I'll be able to explore that area more and keep doing more and more studio stuff. So like the positive side from lockdown is that it forced me to diversify, and I've ended up loving it, So,
Sorry, can I interject with another question?
Yes, and I recognize Brad. I actually have your email, so FYI, I'm going to email you as well. But go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, cool. And I can actually kind of help answer this. He says, have you noticed any chroma shifts on camera when set to a preset CCT color temperature through the entire dimming range of the light? With so many colored LEDs combined create the white light, they often stutter from shifts at the lower range of the dimming. I say it's having tested many lights using the HS scope that measures the camera's actual electronic chroma signal.
Rebecca, did you want to start?
So yeah, I must say, I'll be honest, I only understood half of those words, but so actually we had a new firmware update this week or end of last week, which actually addresses this, that we've been getting a lot of feedback from the people that we have loan lights to, both the X2 and the X1. And all the feedback that we've been getting, we've been putting into new firmware. So we've looked at the dimming curve, we've looked at sort of any shifts that people have noticed, and we've had the engineers working constantly on it. I saw a sheet of equations and right over my head, but the engineers are working constantly on sort of minimizing anything like that. And we recently had a test where the cinematographer or DOP working on it, one of his main takeaways was how great the CRI and TLCI is. So there's definitely no concerns on the accuracy there, but Pam, you can probably elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, so Brad, as you know, you are super, I love reading your emails in the
frozen for me.
CML lighting group.
For the people.
As we know, when
you're back. You're back.
Oh, I'm back.
No, it's okay. I can still see you. I think there's a little bit of lag. I think that's the problem.
I have kids doing online school. We're we're using up a lot of our bandwidth in the internet space. But yeah, as you know, for years, anything when you dim 10% or lower, you do end up getting shifts and things like that. That's been an issue with LED lighting. The nice thing as a gaffer myself, that is a concern, and I haven't seen really much issue on my end as a gaffer, even using the DMX boards. But like Rebecca said, we've even rewritten the grandma set, the profiles, our DMX profiles were even redone to help eliminate any sort of shifts that you would have normally gotten that you don't see anymore with these lights. I'll also email you offline and we can go in further with this, but from my perspective, I haven't had any issues with shifts. I was gaffing about a week and a half ago, and we were doing some stuff with that, and the director calls me and she's like, oh my gosh, the color grading looks amazing, and we haven't seen any shifts go on and from some of the stuff I've done, which is super exciting to be not have to worry about that or stress about that, and knowing that my lights not only are matching, but I'm not getting those shifts that we used to have. And all the colors are those licensed XY coordinates, and they're both daylight and tungsten backed as well. So not only are my filters spot on, but I can dim them all the way down to 3-4%, plus put the diffusion on there, and I don't have any color shifts.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we've been working on internally, and some of the features that are in this new firmware update that we've had through that we haven't actually published publicly yet, and we'll be publishing details of what's been added since we started shipping the X2 very soon. We're working on that in the marketing department. Woo!
So Brad, I'll send you over some of the paperwork or that the engineers have to show you, but it's really exciting. And for someone who dives deep into LED technology and understanding, the different types of color LEDs, what it means, how it affects, the quality versus the output and all of that, I can definitely go in depth with you on that, because it's something that I have dived into as well, and trying to understand like, oh my gosh, we can do a full gamut. We can set it to Rec 709, and knowing how it's able to do that is pretty exciting, and knowing that it's only going to keep getting better.
Cool. Thanks, Pam.
Awesome.
I know I can go on and on. I get so geeky excited about it.
Yeah.
I almost can't.
I'm glad you get geeky excited about it, because I am not technical in the slightest. So yeah. I'm glad that you're able to go into that.
There was so much technical language relating to the lighting industry in the question. I was like thinking, don't ask me. So I was relieved.
Well, and it's changing fast. I taught just a few weeks ago the LED lighting technology to NAB, and I didn't want to really stick too much at the tech. I really did want to, and I actually asked that group, a little bit to help me focus, and they brought in some good advice, focus on the tool aspect of it, which I did, and yet people still wanted to know deeper on okay, well, how's it doing this and how's it doing that? And I was like, well, I can tell you. So
nice.
To the one question we have in the Q&A, I'm actually just finding out the answer to that about the power boost in flash mode, because I don't actually know the answer to that, so bear with me.
Oh, so for the X1, does operating in flash mode boost the strength similar to the Neill or EOS? I do not know that as well, but
yes.
Peter, you have used it.
It's basically, is it the output higher in flash than continuous? Is that what you're asking?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely is. I mean, I don't know. Wouldn't know the.
I have just messaged
numbers, but...
Rod for the numbers, so hopefully, because I'm not sure of the exact figure, and I don't want to quote the wrong one, so I've just asked him on that.
Well, and even on the Neill or the EOS, the amount of power in the flash mode would be different depending on if you're plugged in or if you're on battery.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And with the X1, if it is running on batteries, then we do run at 100%. So
yes.
Good stuff.
That's a big point, because there's not any other light that can run full 100% power on batteries. And that's a very good point. And Roy Wagner was running his X1 on batteries, and he was running it for 5.5 hours on batteries alone.
Yeah, we've had a lot of good feedback on sort of how long the batteries last. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a great location light. it's in terms of the actual specs on the output, you can definitely expect much more strength than the Innova Pro 2. We would probably guess, like in flash mode, probably about twice as bright as the Innova Pro 2 is an estimate. So, but I'm waiting for the exact figure at the moment.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the new lights. And what I also know is when we get it in the hands on set and filmmakers and gaffers, getting the feedback from them in those real world experiences is great, because now we can take that feedback and incorporate it, talk to the engineers, and then make that light even better.
Yeah,
that's huge. So Peter, your feedback to us makes a huge difference. Roy Wagner's feedback, again,
Amazing.
Huge difference. And then we have it on various sets and current light testing and making firmware specific for those particular projects. You know, that's exactly what we want. We want to use the technology to further the story and the art that we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the most important feedback is going to be coming from the people who are using it. You know, we want to listen to, you know, you, the viewer, you know, the people who are using the lights, and we want to take that on board and, you know, make truly the ultimate one by one.
And Brad, yes, being able to test it on the HS scope versus lighting metrics. And for those, I know I'm doing a little education. The CRI and TCLI measurements aren't exactly great. Granted, the TCLI measurements are better than a CRI estimate. CRI wasn't meant for everything that we're particularly doing. I mean, it does let me know, okay, I am going to get some good colors out of this. It's accurate colors. But yes, Brad, I will talk to you afterwards. Love to have you kind of take a look at it and really kind of understand what you're looking for, and work with you on that. So I'll definitely email you after this.
Yeah, the firmware updates are actually, I mean, I guess it's partly a side effect of the decade we're in technology-wise. It's great, you know, 20 years ago, the idea of that was preposterous. You buy a light and that's the way it was forever. But
Yes.
It is great where we're at the stage that we're at in technology with this marriage between, you know, the digital and the physical world means that it's amazing where you can just say, well, actually, I would love to have this option or connect it with this. I mean, even your discussions that you were talking about interconnecting with different pieces of software, the ability to listen to the consumer and say, well, actually, can we make it so that we can connect to this? And these things are possible now. So they're a much more worthwhile investment because you're not locked in the same way as you would have been only a few short years ago.
And as I know we're coming to the end, but I do want to, these are what's called a 5-chip diode. So you have your RGBW, and then you have a cool white and a warm white. And what this allows is you get better color accuracy and more punch, because normally your colors, like, you know, for like an RE Sky panel, it's RGB, and they use those colors to create the perception of the white that you're using. And so to be able to have that separate, that way you can really nail down your colors, and knowing that you're going to have better punch and accuracy in the power and the color that you're getting is a really nice advancement for all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have, we'll probably finish up on this question. Rebecca, do you want to?
Yeah, I can actually kind of help answer this. So does Titan work in sync with other Rotolight equipment for photography? Using some Titans simultaneously, is it possible to create profiles in groups, each with a color, intensity, etc.? I will let you start on this because actually we ended up using one of these features on the shoot we did, the Roto Dmx thing. And Peter, that's when Rod was at the back of the Innova flashing in time with the drums. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yes, it does work in sync with other Rotolight equipment. In fact, I can take the little Neo and connect it with the Titan and sync it all together. And you can set your presets, that's the word I'm looking for. You can set presets within your Titan to create profiles and groups with each color. I think that would be needed on a DMX board or through Luminaire, not necessarily in the backlight, but the backlight you can set your presets for that.
We also have yeah, we also have a total of 50 presets across all of our
Wow.
menus, which
Yes.
is a lot of presets.
To USB
Name them
stick.
all.
Yes. So basically, yeah, you will be able to save and load presets to USB stick. Not yet. That's coming in a firmware update soon. And also, where was I going with this? We also have the built-in Skyport
Yes.
receiver. So for photography, the Titans are no exception. They also have the Chrome Skyport built in, so you can use it with that, and that will connect with color temperature and flash. I don't know that it controls diffusion. I want to say no, but don't quote me on that.
Does either.
No, I don't think it does.
But if you don't have the Skyport, it does have your flash sync, so you can use third-party trigger receivers as well for those particular lights.
Yeah, so as I mentioned when we were on the Bridges shoot, we used one of our new DMX modes called Roto Dmx, where we basically used an Innova Pro 2 as kind of the master unit, which we had off the side, and Rod was at the back of the Innova strobing it in time with the drum beat. So the effect you get in the videos of when it's strobing, part of that is Rod on the back of the Innova tapping in time for the drums. It was great.
Yeah, he could be a drummer if he wanted.
I know.
He's got the timing.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming to the end of our hour. This is a lot of fun, and I got so excited geekiness. But
nothing wrong with
I
that.
feel like we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, definitely. So I appreciate, Peter, you are absolutely phenomenal. You're so fun to talk to. It's so great to there's more of us filmmakers, photographers in the world, and it's exciting to have stuff that can be in both our worlds, and obviously as a creative and as the tech aspect of it. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work, and you're going to have a busy time on tour once you start hitting the road again. And again, thank you so much for being on our webinar, and
it's been great to be here.
More of your work.
Yeah, and also thank you for being such a huge part of the Titan X1 and its launch, and also and helping us so much. It's been great to work with you, and also for those that don't know, Peter is also our newest Master of Light. So
thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
So yeah, we love having having him as part of the Rotolight family. You know, it's great to sort of grow the team and sort of work with creatives like yourself who love what they do and are great at what they do, and they're just so fun to work with.
You see, in about 6 months' time, they'll be able to take this and then cut it to a clip of you after having dealt with 4 weeks of questions from me, where I'm constantly asking you that. You'd be like,
"Oh, I'm not the one who'll be answering the questions, so I won't mind."
That's right. I'd be like, "It started off so well, then he wouldn't leave us alone." But yeah.
Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Here in the US, it is holiday season for Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I hope it goes great.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching. And until next time, be able to check us out on our Facebook user group. We do have an up and coming growing user group on Facebook where a lot of
I will link that in the chat.
Yeah, link it in the chat. A lot of the questions can be answered. We do updates. Obviously, a lot of users submit or post stuff they're working on with Rotolight. It's actually pretty an inspirational group. I love it.
It's really good fun to be a part of.
Yes, and we're growing. So come join us. Come say hi.
And Mike, if I could give my handle across social platforms is Shoot the Sound.
Shoot the Sound.
Sound, yeah. For some reason, with my accent, a lot of people think I'm saying sound. I'm like, why would I shoot sound?
Why would I shoot sound?
Yeah, but it's sound, as in audio.
I love it. Okay, so Shoot the Sound, Instagram, etc., all of that. And come find us over on the Facebook user group. And until next time, go out and create stuff safely.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.